Albuquerque. In 1706, New Mexico Governor Francisco Cuervo y Valdes founded the Villa De Albuquerque, now spelled Albuquerque. Here, the Camino Royale, Royal Highway, wound its way through a series of farming and ranching communities to a nearby ford, linking the road to settlements on the west bank of the Rio Grande. Albuquerque retains its original plan with streets radiating from a central plaza. The 1793 San Felipe de Neri church and rectory remain from the Spanish colonial period, and most historic buildings around the plaza date from circa 1870 to circa 1900. See other side. Continued. Albuquerque was the main commercial center for the Rio Grande Valley until 1880 arrival of the railroad, 1.5 miles to the east of the plaza. Growth and development centered on the railroad and New Albuquerque. Now known as Plaza Vieja or Old Town, the plaza, plan of narrow streets and historic buildings are representative of a traditional Hispanic city. In this plaza were enacted, A.D. 1706, by Governor and Captain General Don Francisco Cuervo y Valdes, ceremonies incident to the founding of the Villa of Albuquerque, named after the Spanish Viceroy Don Francisco Fernández de la Cueva Enriquez, the Duke of Albuquerque, erected 1922 Lew Wallace chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. In early April 1862, Civil War Confederate forces that had invaded New Mexico territory began their retreat back to Texas following defeat at Glorieta Pass, east of Santa Fe, 2 weeks earlier. Confederate artillery commander Major Teal buried 8 cannon barrels near this plaza to prevent their capture by pursuing Union forces. 27 years later, Major Teal returned to Albuquerque to show local citizens where the cannon barrels were buried. On August 19, 1889, all 8 barrels were excavated from a chili pepper patch, formerly a corral, some 500 feet northeast of San Felipe de Neri Church, near the present-day Albuquerque Museum of Art and History. 2 of the cannon barrels have remained in Albuquerque. Local residents made new carriages for the 2 remaining cannon barrels and displayed them on the plaza for many years. Because of the great value of the original barrels, replicas were later made and replaced the originals on the plaza. These replica barrels are mounted on prairie-style gun carriages, most likely the configuration used by Confederate forces in New Mexico. It is sometimes said that these 2 great mountain howitzers guard the Old Town Plaza. They represent a proud and important era in Albuquerque history. The original mountain howitzer barrels and other artifacts from the New Mexico campaign of the Civil War are on display at the Albuquerque Museum of Art and History, 2 blocks northeast of this plaza. The city of Albuquerque and the donors listed on the opposite side of this marker completed a howitzer restoration and interpretation project in 2007. 1706, 1793, 1796, today. In recognition of the significant role it has played in the history of our city, state, and country, San Felipe de Neri Church is on the registers of historical places. San Felipe de Neri Church has unceasingly served as a house of prayer for over 300 years as the Mother Church of Albuquerque. Continuously, efforts are being made to honor and preserve this landmark for future generations. These processes are ongoing and in constant need of support. Your kindness, prayers, and generosity for the preservation of this historical site is not only greatly needed, but significantly appreciated. Donations are accepted inside the main door of the church. All other inquiries may be directed to the San Felipe de Neri Church Parish Office. Thank you, and may God bless you, the community of San Felipe de Neri. San Felipe de Neri, oldest church in Albuquerque, has continuously served the community without interruption since 1706. Originally founded and served by the Franciscan friars, this parish church has been served successively by the secular clergy of Durango, Mexico, 1817, the Jesuit Fathers and Brothers, 1868, and since 1966 has been administered by the secular clergy of the Archdiocese of Santa Fe. Please enter this church with respect. Villa De Albuquerque, Old Town. In the 1930s, families from Corrales, Bernalillo, and Alameda would drive their horse and buggies down the boulevard to barter or exchange their produce in Old Town for commodities such as flour, lard, sugar, and soap. Rio Grande Boulevard was also a meeting place for neighborhood children. On All Hallows Eve, we'd light a fire in the middle of the road. Emma Moya. Many historians believe that sections of the Rio Grande Boulevard are parts of the Camino Royale. The Camino Royale linked the many Spanish settlements along the river, carrying travelers between Mexico City and Santa Fe, the capital of the province of New Mexico. The Villa de Albuquerque, one of the more prominent settlements, was founded in 1706 east of this marker. When the railroad created Newtown east of the villa in 1880, it caused a major, if brief, boom in the Old Town. Newtown soon became the center of the city, but Old Town continued as an important valley destination. The photograph shows some of the stores and hotels that lined the street in the 1880s. 4th Street eventually replaced Rio Grande Boulevard as the major road to the north. The boulevard, as it has been called locally for generations, now carries traffic to and from Old Town, nearby museums, and other attractions and neighborhoods to the north and the south. Photograph is of Melchior Varner's Hotel, west side of Rio Grande Boulevard, across the street from this historical marker, circa 1880. Albuquerque is the original spelling. One of the R's was dropped over time. Don Francisco Cuervo y Valdes, founder of Albuquerque, April 23, 1706. Illustrious son of the province of Asturias in Spain and the governor of New Mexico. Sculpture funded by the city of Albuquerque's 1% for the Arts program as per City Council Resolution 57 in 1984. Buck McCain's the artist. Santa Fe Bronze Incorporated is the foundry. Dedication ceremonies were held April 23, 1988. San Felipe de Albuquerque, named for King Philip V of Spain and the Duke of Albuquerque, was founded in 1706 by Governor Francisco Cuervo Valdes with 30 families from Bernalillo, accompanied by soldiers to protect them from nomadic Indians. Spanish custom required the church to be ready when a town was established, so it is assumed that the church was also built in 1706. The original church faced east toward the old plaza, which extended north and south. After floods and disasters, it was remodeled and moved in 1795, much as we see it today. The present plaza dates from American times. In Spanish days, the town was often raided by hostile Indians. With the opening of overland trade, Albuquerque became an important stop on the Santa Fe Chihuahua Trail, presented by the Woodmen of the World, April 1969. In 1821, Mexico became independent from Spain, and the flag of the Mexican Republic flew over the plaza. Trade began with the U.S., and soon wagons rolled over the Santa Fe Trail from Missouri. They came through Albuquerque on their way to Chihuahua. The wagons brought new products, customs, and people. Traders, mountain men, and trappers passed through the plaza. In 1846, the Stars and Stripes were raised over the plaza by U.S. troops under General Stephen W. Kearny, followed by Colonel Dolphin of the Missouri Volunteers and Colonel Cook with the Mormon Battalion. Susan Magoffin lent charm, and the Camel Corps a bizarre note as they passed through this plaza. Pioneers moved west, and Albuquerque became a major town by the time of the Civil War. Presented by Plaza Business Association, June 1969. March 2, 1862. The Union cavalry, commanded by Captain Herbert Enos, abandoned the garrison at Albuquerque, burned buildings, food, and material, and retreated north to Fort Union. General Henry Sibley, commander of the Southern forces, entered the city and raised the Confederate flag over the plaza. Some of the citizens were pro-South, but most were loyal to the U.S. After the defeat of the Confederate Army at Apache Canyon, they retreated to Albuquerque. Union General E.R.S. Canby began the bombardment of Albuquerque on April 10, 1862. After several hours, he ordered a ceasefire to protect citizens. The Confederates buried their cannons and under cover of darkness left Albuquerque, dispersed as an army, and returned to Texas. Presented by Albuquerque Historical Society, July 1969. After the Civil War, there was a great change in Old Albuquerque, but without the lawlessness that marked other frontier towns. It was a supply center for Indians, farmers, ranchers, and military posts. Hotels, saloons, dance halls, blacksmith shops, stables, and eventually a school and a bank joined the old church around the plaza. In 1880, the railroad came, but its route lay 2 miles east. Most businesses moved to Newtown, and a horse-drawn streetcar down Railroad Avenue joined the two Albuquerques. Once again, the plaza became a quiet place surrounded by homes, a few stores, and always the church. Old Albuquerque became an island of yesterday surrounded by a sea of change and progress, and thus it remains today the historical birthplace of the Duke City, Albuquerque. Presented by the Kiwanis Club of Albuquerque, April 1970. La Placita, 1706. Casa de Armijo. Built in 1706 and occupied for many generations by the Armijo family, who were prominent in local history, this hacienda was gay with social life. During the turmoil of the early settlement, the Mexican, Spanish, and American Civil War occupation, it was used as a fort and a refuge. Later, still occupied by the Armijo family, portions were used as an early trading post. In 1930, it was restored from a ruin to its present condition and remodeled in conformity with its old character. Iglesia de San Felipe de Neri, funded 1706. Church of St. Philip the Hero, founded in 1706. Historical Landmark Survey, San Felipe de Neri, 1793. Spiritual Renewal. The Dominguez Escalante expedition rested here in late December 1776 after its vain 5-month attempt to find a new route to the California missions. Following the visit, Father Francisco Antonio Dominguez ordered the church to use the official name of San Felipe de Neri instead of the traditional name San Francisco Xavier. Fray Andres Garcia, who had served 33 years in New Mexico and was known as a woodworker, builder, and carver of bultos, or religious statues, was the mission father here in 1776. There were 24 households in the Villa Plaza near the church. American Revolution Bicentennial, 1776-1976. History of ownership. A Spanish deed dated August 10, 1849, was granted by Manuel Armijo, the mayor, to Nestor Montoya. Montoya purchased additional adjoining acreage from Ambrosia Baca and his sister, Juana Baca, in 1854, and Manuel Armijo in 1855. Montoya died in July of 1883. In his will, Nestor Montoya, who had no children, named his wife Rosela Montoya, one Camila Padilla, who was then a minor, and Jesus Candelaria, to whom he owed money, as his beneficiaries. Henry Trumbull, Miss Padilla's legal guardian, sold her portion of the property to Jesus and Juanita Candelaria de Armijo in 1884 for $900. They also acquired Mrs. Montoya's property. James Murphy was the next owner of the property in 1885. When he died in 1888, the property was left to his wife, Maria Antonia Ronquilla de Murphy. She died a year later, and the deed was transferred to one of her sons, Camilo Dominique E. Murphy. Years later, in 1915, Camilo D. Murphy died in Albuquerque and left the six-room house, corral, and placita to his wife, Sonesta Azores, together with furnishings, a wagon, an ambulance, and a set of harnesses. The land, owned collectively by Murphy's children, was sold to Jesus Romero, born in 1859, and his wife, Mary Springer D. Romero. They built the house in 1915. Jesus Romero died in 1935 and left the house to his wife, Mary. Mary subsequently sold it to her sister, Lucia, in 1937. In 1943, this house became the Francis Lynn Home for Unwed Mothers. About the house. The original woodwork was flat yellow pine that had many coats of paint over the years. This has been replaced in 1985 with yellow oak. The floors are yellow pine, except for that which was the dining room. The floor in this room is oak as well as the wainscoting. You will notice a circular brass plate on the floor of the dining room. This was a buzzer system to call a servant from the kitchen. The room is still heated by the original steam radiators. It has been totally rewired. A tin roof, simulating Spanish tile, is still in use. The extension from the back of the house was constructed after 1915. The outside structure walls are adobe brick. The house has a partial basement under the original structure with a crawl space under the addition. The sketch of the house as it appears today was done by Gail Malo. An interesting side note for you. It has been said that in the 1950s, some of the residents of the Home for Unwed Mothers called the house Casa de Boo Boo.